In this episode, I want to talk about identity and how small shifts in our identity can help us be more consistent. How we can follow through on the things that we say we want to do and we tell people are important to us. And this is something that has been made clear to me over the past couple of years. There's things that I've read, the courses that I've taken, the coaches that I've worked with, everything packaged together. A lot of it comes down to our identity. And I'm not talking ID cards and passports and things like that. I'm talking more about, I guess, the hats that we wear in different situations when we're around different people. And we all have multiple identities. The challenge is picking the right one for what it is we want to do in any given moment. In some situations, we may be a parent. In another, we may be the child. We may be the son or the daughter. These are a couple of examples, but there are more, and some of the others may feel a bit more familiar to you. If you're a sports fan and you have a favourite team, you've taken on the identity of a fan for that team. There may be a group name for you. There may be a jersey that you like to wear. You've taken on that identity as a fan of that team. If you have a certain religion, and I'm not trying to dig into religion here, but there's an identity associated with that. There are some expectations or actions that are related, whether it's going to a church or to a mosque or to a synagogue or, whatever that place of worship is. Conversely, if you are an atheist, you have an identity as well. And there are certain actions that are associated with that identity. In the workplace, we may have the identity of a colleague and a team player, but then we may also be the boss or a manager of a group of people. We are always playing with multiple identities. At the weekends, maybe you're a soccer mom, and that's the identity that other people have given to you and you've given to yourself because you always go to practice and you take your kids wherever they need to go and you support them. Those are just some examples. But when it comes to consistency and working towards the things that we want, creating a new identity or shifting our existing one can help us be more consistent. If you're a sports fan of a particular team, chances are you will check the scores regularly. You'll see the player transfers, what's happening, what's the latest news, what's potentially impacting your team. That's an action that you will probably do unconsciously now because you've been doing it for so long, but it's a natural action for you because you're a fan of that team. So how can we use that sense of, okay, there are some actions here, there are some thoughts, there are some processes that are associated with an identity, and how can we use those to be more consistent? And it's about adopting that new identity or a new identity that's going to help move you forward. We've just touched on sports, religion, activities that you may do at the weekend and the identity that you, or the cap that you put on with that. So if you want to be consistent and you want to be a writer, okay, well then the identity of a writer is somebody who writes. So in order for you to finish your book, you're going to have to write to finish it. And if you want that to be done sooner, you're going to have to spend more time writing. And sometimes the easiest way to do that is to see yourself as a writer. You put on that cap, you take on that identity and say, what would a writer do? Okay, they would write. Right, okay, I need to think about this. How can I get the tools together, the resources, the knowledge? Okay, when am I going to dedicate time to this to write? Does a writer write every day? Probably, even if it's just notes and ideas. Maybe that's a habit that I need to create. I can be consistent with that because that may spark things in terms of the core content of the book that I'm writing. So a writer probably writes every day. Okay, well, that's an identity I can take on. That's something that I can do. CrossFit is a great example. If you are somebody who's into CrossFit, you do a slightly different type of workout from traditional gym weights and things like that, but it's an identity you often take on, and you can identify other people who are also CrossFitters based on maybe what they wear, or their body mass, or the way that their muscles are toned and things like that. And if you're a CrossFitter, chances are you will focus on eating more healthily and doing certain types of exercises, and you'll be consistent with that because you've put that hat on. You have given yourself that identity. And we often talk about motivation and not having the motivation for something. It's like, oh, it's raining outside. You know what? I'm not going to go to the gym. I haven't got the motivation for that. But if you were a CrossFitter, you would probably be like, but I'm going to do it indoors. It's only rain, and I'm going to just have to walk through it to get in. And if I'm committed to being a CrossFitter, then I need to go and work out because I understand the importance of working out regularly. If I let it slip, I actually set myself backwards, and therefore, if I set myself backwards, I don't move forwards. So there's that identity piece that then starts to come into play, and we can look at every situation and say, well, I'm this, I'm an X. Okay, what would I do? What would that type of person do in this situation? What is it that I should be doing? And a great example within the business space that I use is with ClickFunnels. The identity that people take on there is a funnel hacker. They go and assess other people's sales pages and the structures of them and the information on there, the layouts, the type of images that they use, and say, okay, well, this is clearly working for somebody else. Maybe I can think about some of these elements for my own pages. And so they take on that identity to say, I am a funnel hacker. What is it that I am going to do? I need to go and break down other people's pages, understand them, assess them, and then I can utilize some of that for my own sales pages. In my world, I try and support people in taking on the identity of a freedom hunter, because the process that we go through is, okay, let's craft that vision. What is it that you want for your life? How do you want to live? How do you want to spend your time? Let's uncover those chains. Once we know what they are, we can start to break them. And as we start to break them, we can move towards the goals and the vision that you set. But as a freedom hunter, you also don't settle for any crap. The rules of society that aren't going to help you get to where you want to get to. So there are certain things in the identity of being a freedom hunter that says, I am going to chase and do whatever it takes for me to get the life that I want. And that's what I support people with, because having that identity shift and becoming a freedom hunter means that they can look at any situation and say, time out on this is not helping me. Right, let's park that. Let's get back on track. Where is it I'm trying to get to? What am I trying to achieve? What are the things that are holding me back and stopping me? Right, let's get rid of those. Okay, this is the direction I'm going in. I'm not going to put up for any crap. I want to achieve what I've set myself, the goals, the vision, the dreams. And if we can take on identities like that, that's where it starts to feed into the consistency. We will take those actions because the identity and the cap that we've put on almost internally tells us we should. That's who we are. We're an athlete. We're a freedom hunter. We're a funnel hacker. We already have that in other areas of our lives, so it shouldn't be too much of a stretch to say, you know what, I'm just going to add one more hat, and in a particular situations or context, this is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to act. And as I said, that's how we can build the consistency, because this is what this type of person would do. They would write, they would do exercise, they would eat healthily. Okay, that's the action that I need to take, because I am that identity. So motivation, we don't have to worry about anymore. Again, whether it's raining or we've had a hard day or any of those sorts of things, we don't have to wait for motivation, because we focus everything on consistency. And if you've read my book or taken my course, you'll know that for me, focused repetition, and that's the consistency bit, focused repetition enables experiences, desires, opportunity, and money. That's my, I guess, tagline for the word freedom. That's what freedom means to me. That's how we achieve it. So the consistency we can build by having a new identity. And yes, it may take a little time to build. Think about it as like, okay, this is now a natural part of me. It's a default part of me. I can switch into it depending on the context. But that initial reframe in our head to say, I can take on an identity. I already have different identities and caps that I wear in different situations. So why not add another one to my list? And if I want to be a writer, I know this is what a writer does. This is how they spend their time. This is what they focus on. So great, I can do that. So think about, for you, what's the identity that you can add to your list that's going to help you take the action that you need, that is going to support you in being more consistent.